Hey, Nelson, alcoholic addict. That is not my real name. That's my pen name that I use here at LOL Sober. Speaking of which, last week was the 1 year birthday of LOL Sober, my sober newsletter. I started it about a year ago, right at the end of April. I thought it'd be nice today to say thank you to all my subscribers. This isn't a giant million subscriber newsletter, but I feel like we have a nice little community here of people who are trying to stay sober and smile while doing it. So you're my type of people, and I want to say thank you. I thought it would be worth talking about a couple of things that I've learned in the last year or so of doing this. And so I'll mention a few things. First, let me discuss the anonymity part, which I've talked about it before on here. I wrestled with what does anonymity mean in 2022? Does it mean the same thing as 1942? And I wrestled with this for a while before I started LOL Sober, and honestly, I still am. I've read sober literature and talked to lots of respected sober friends, and I still find varying opinions. Like, should you not tweet out or put on Facebook that you have 5 years sober, or is that helpful in today's day and age? Should you have a newsletter? Should you not? It's really hard. So I try to be very respectful of the programs I participate in and not mention them specifically. That's one thing that I landed on over the past year. But what is the right answer about anonymity? I don't know. I'm comfortable with the way I've been doing things, which involves general discussion of specific programs and also not using my real name. But if you wonder, like, should somebody do a sober newsletter at all? I'm not going to argue with you because I sometimes do too. It is a very tricky topic, and I'll honestly say that over the last year, I've written a few things. I've written for this newsletter, but I've also written a few things with my real name on it and published them and had people reach out and say that really helped me. I went to rehab, and now I have 65 days sober. There's one guy that read something I wrote about being sober, and he went to rehab, got sober, stayed sober for almost a year now, and the rehab hired him. He works at the rehab now. So I don't know. What does it mean to carry the message as far as anonymity is concerned? I don't know. It's really tricky. And I think at the end of the day, you do the best you can and trust your higher power and see where that lands you. So that's where I'm at. The second thing I wanted to bring up, which I think is a little bit more interesting and helpful here, is that what the newsletter has helped me with, which is that I spend a lot of time thinking about the newsletter. When I hear something in a meeting that makes me think, or I read an interesting passage in sober literature, or I just have a life experience that relates to sobriety, I will often take my phone and I will type that thought quickly into my notes app. And that's a trick I learned when I started doing stand-up a few years ago. It's what all stand-up comedians do. They either have like a notebook or they do it on their phone. It's just so important to quickly jot down a good idea when it floats into your brain, because sometimes they float back out, right? They're just kind of in one ear and out the other sometimes. So what that has helped me do is I'm constantly latching onto things and thinking about them and trying to form them into ideas. And I wasn't doing that a year ago. I also spend quite a bit of time writing and voicing these newsletters. I mean, it takes a little bit of time to write these and put them together. So I publish twice a week right now, and I probably spend about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, maybe up to 2 hours working on each one. So when you think about it, that's about I'd say 3 hours of actual work every week. And then I probably spend another hour or two thinking about, playing around with other ideas, gathering up jokes. That takes a while to gather up jokes that I include on every newsletter. And then I post everything on various social media accounts. That takes a few minutes. So all told, I think it is about 5 hours a week that I spend on this newsletter. And that's 5 more hours devoted to recovery than I would do if I didn't do the newsletter. So if all else fails, I'm logging 5 more hours where my brain is just in a pretty good place thinking about this thing we're trying to do, stay sober. I'd love to say that if I stopped doing the newsletter, I would have 5 hours to read Letters from Bill Wilson to Dr. Bob or some other recovery book. But like, the truth is I'd probably watch another 2 or 3 basketball games or MMA fights or something else not very productive. So I guess, what's the point? I guess my main message 1 year in would be that adding in recovery to other corners of a sober life is really beneficial, at least in my experience. I honestly would be pissing away those 5 hours on TV or just resentments or some other activity that has no real value in my life, gossiping. I don't know what I would do. I think those 5 hours have helped me inject maybe like 10% more recovery into my life. And that's been a big deal. That's something. So my very gentle suggestion would be to maybe try adding something fresh that keeps you thinking about sobriety more than usual. And there's a million options. It's not just go to more meetings or anything like that. It could be reading a cool recovery book that you're interested in, or there's podcasts. There's many, many podcasts. Add a podcast or 2 talking about sobriety, mental health, something like that. Find a good person who's sober on YouTube. There's a lot of people on YouTube talking about sobriety. Or I love hanging out with sober people outside of meetings for an hour or 2 every week. If you're going to watch an NBA game, invite your friend over who loves the NBA and is a sober guy. That is very helpful, I think. Anything else that keeps sobriety plugged into my life is helpful. It's certainly helped me. So to conclude, thanks to all my readers and listeners for coming along for this ride. It's been fun. It's been wild. It's helped me enormously. And I hope it's helped you too.